What's the scariest experience you've ever had at a gas station or rest stop? I'm a truck driver and I've posted this story on r/truckers before. I typically team drive, so we're rolling basically all the time. My co-driver had a death in the family and took like a week off, so I was solo driving. Which means I had to stop every night to sleep. I was coming back to Oz from MA and stopped for the night at this sketch little truck stop on I-40 at the Oz and M border. I had dinner and then got in the bunk to sleep. Now most trucks have a curtain between the cab and the sleeper berth, plus curtains that wrap around the inside of the cab windshield and side windows, with the idea being if you're sleeping while your co-driver is driving, you close the sleeper curtain. If you're parked and sleeping, you close the cab curtains. It gives you more space. So, cab curtains closed, sleeper curtains open, I hit the bunk. Truck is idling for the AC. Some kind of noise wakes me up after being asleep for 4 or 5 hours. I'm waking up, a bit disoriented as I'm usually team driving. As I'm waking up, I see flashing red lights in the cab and I can hear the click click, click click of my hazard lights. They're on. I knew I hadn't left them on, kind of freaked out as I realize only one way they could be on, someone pushed the switch and it wasn't me. I jump up and grab what I keep for protection in the truck. I look into the cab. Sure enough, hazards are on. Then I notice that my GPS unit is missing off the dash. Veep, someone has been in my truck while I've been sleeping. I move up into the driver's seat and pull the curtain back, peering outside expecting to see some scumbag running off with my GPS and whatever else. Everything seems quiet but it's pretty dark. I open the curtains more, turn on my headlights and get a better look around. I see nothing. Beep, I think, they're gone. My $500 truck GPS is gone, probably other stuff is gone. I think to check the doors, they're both locked. WTF, how could that be? I look down and see my GPS unit hanging by the power cord. The suction cup came loose, the GPS fell off the dash and hit the hazard lights button on the way down. Beep, what are the chances? I didn't sleep very well the rest of that night. Kind of funny now, but it scared me pretty good that night. I like team driving better. Edit, deleted some repeated words.
Working at a gas station. This lady came in through the front door and said she was having a problem out at the pumps. She'd clicked the lever that let the nozzle keep pumping gas, but then somehow managed to pull the nozzle out of her car's receptacle. Not knowing what to do, she walked to the store and told me about it. I thought she just spilled a little gas on the pad, but no. She'd left the nozzle on the ground, spilling gallons of fuel onto the pad. By the time I got out there, it was a pool of flammable liquid. Holy beep, shut down the pumps, evacuate the area, call the fire department. No, ma'am, don't get into your car and drive away. Don't touch anything. The FD showed up and said, "Wow, we've never seen anything this bad." Fortunately, the gas station didn't blow up. Took a few hours to clean up the mess. In the middle of an Arizona summer. In 100-degree heat.
Was working at a chain gas station, think it rhymes with freeway, and this guy walks in and comes to the counter with 4 very large alcoholic beverages. I can see he's already lit and I started to talk to him a bit. I was hoping he was living around the block or something, but he calmly stated he was on his way somewhere that was easily 3 hours away. I thought to myself, oh no, you're not. I called the non-emergency police number and reported him as a drunk driver. They got him and he blew over 3 times the legal limit. I probably saved his life that night. I showed up to the court date and he took a plea deal. They threw the book at him too. I was scared because I had never actively tried to do something like that before, but I felt obligated to phone it in. I'm not sorry I did it either.
This is probably the reverse of what people expect to read here. It's not like it's a spooky, horrifying experience, just my scariest experience. Some friends and I wanted some snacks from corner store, gas station. I was sitting in the back right seat. So pulled up near the front and dropped me off in and out. So anyways, I grab all the snacks and come back out and enter back into the car, and while entering I can't see my friends in the front. Huh? Anyways, I continue to enter the car and sit down, look to my left, and there's a little kid just sitting there staring at me. I was the stranger. I entered the exact same car model, color where it dropped me off like 1 minute earlier, but it was not my friend's vehicle. All I could think is that some dad is about to explode on me. So I quickly get out of the vehicle and spot my friends parked just ahead in a parking spot now, and quickly head over and recount what just happened. So that may have been my scariest experience and that kid's scariest experience.
Here's the creepiest. I was driving through the Midwest going up to go visit Mount Rushmore. I was taking minor highways most of the way because I enjoy scenic drives, but I started running low on gas in western Nebraska. I drove with my gas light on for about another 20 miles by nothing but empty fields when I finally see a sign for a town, Palisade. I turned in and see probably the most podunk town I had ever seen, and I live in the country. Seriously, there was not a single car on the road and only a couple parked around randomly. I pulled into a small, single-pump gas station and noticed that there was no credit card input for the pump. No big deal, I thought, so I turned and tried to go into the small service shack that was by it, but the door was locked and the lights were out. I looked through the window and the shack was completely empty, like it had been abandoned. I got in my car to try my luck going to the next town, but my wife told me she needed to use the restroom. So, I drove down Main Street past boarded-up windows and empty stores and parked at the local post office. It was closed. I was 30 minutes too late. So, I started to tell her that there was absolutely nothing open in this town when I saw a door that consisted of plywood instead of glass on a shop that had a busted window open and a couple people walk out carrying a bag. So, we walked over, while being stared at the whole time by the people who came out, and pulled open the plywood door and entered a narrow, extremely dark, dirty, disorganized, practically unstocked country store which employed a single worker at the front who was a bigger, burly guy wearing a greasy set of overalls and a trucker hat. It's a little hard to describe, but he seriously looked straight out of a horror movie. I asked the guy behind the counter if there was a restroom that we could use, but he either had trouble hearing or trouble understanding, so I repeated myself louder and slower. Twice. Finally, he heard, understood and told me in the thickest country accent possible that it was in the back. The then repeated himself, giving me extremely detailed directions on how to get to it when I could practically see it from where I was standing. He then proceeded to repeat himself a third time, going into excruciating detail on the perils I may face in going to the bathroom, such as low toilet paper or boxes in the way. I finally thanked him and walked to the back, and sure enough, there were dirty, dusty boxes of empty, used cleaning supplies strewn about everywhere that we had to step around before we got to the door. I opened it and the sight made a truck stop bathroom look like a palace. Luckily my wife did not notice the half-dozen roaches scurry off, probably because the whole place was so dark, but she did notice the mold all over the walls, the puddle of an unknown substance on the floor, and the 50 or so empty toilet paper rolls strewn about. I asked her if she was okay, and she hesitantly told me that she would be fine and that she really had to go. I started walking around the store while constantly being silently stared at by the guy in front. I grabbed a bottle of water to buy. I always buy something if I am going to use the restroom at a place. When my wife finally came out of the restroom. When I went to the front to pay for it, he finally asked me if I found the bathroom okay. I told him that we did, paid for the bottle of water, and left with him staring at us the entire time. As we walked out, there were a few people across the street having a conversation, but immediately stopped and stared at us. So, I ignored them best I could, got in the car, and started driving off, but I noticed a car parked at the one-pump gas station as I passed it, fueling. I did not care though. I got out of that town before it went full twilight zone and was able to make it to the next town before I ran completely out.
20 years ago I worked at a marina gas dock. Guy comes in to get his boat filled. What no one knew was that the guys who had just finished fixing his boat hadn't properly reconnected up his gas lines. So as my coworker was pumping gas into his boat, the gas isn't going into his fuel tank, but was instead flowing into his bilge. Then the bilge pump automatically kicked in to deal with the rising water level inside the boat. Had that pump sparked, the fireball would have burned us all to dust. Instead, it just created a bit of an ecological nightmare as all the gas that I'd pumped into the boat got pumped out into the lake.
Not the most terrifying story, but it creeped me out when it happened a couple years ago. I had just packed up the majority of my life into my car and was driving from Georgia to move back to New Hampshire where I grew up. I had stuff packed to my ceiling in my car and so could only really see out of my front window and to left. I was asleep at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere after many hours driving. A couple of hours into my restless sleep in my seat that couldn't recline due to all the stuff in my car, I feel my car rocking a bit. I'm deep enough in sleep that I somehow convince myself that it's nothing for a little while, but the rocking persists. Earlier in the night, long story short, when it had been pouring rain, I had wrecked a tire very badly because I couldn't stop due to road conditions after it had gone flat, and ended up having to put my spare donut on, which is the main reason I had decided to stop at a rest area to wait for a local mechanic shop to open up so I could buy a new tire and continue my journey north. So anyway, now my car is rocking and I get a shot of adrenaline that jolts me awake as I realize that something isn't right and my car shouldn't be rocking by itself. It's just barely morning light as I jump out to try to get a view of the other side of my car that I can't see from inside because of all of my belongings blocking my view, and there stands someone who is parked next to me in a mostly empty lot while holding a tire iron. They sheepishly tell me some story I can't remember and that they were just checking my donut and were wondering if I wanted to trade for theirs because theirs doesn't fit their car well enough or something. Deep in that state of post-sleep stupor where I can't string two thoughts together, I ask them if they were touching my car while I was inside. They say no, and although I wasn't clear-headed enough to be able to understand if their story is realistic or not, or whether or not I should help them, I was sharp enough to understand that they've just lied to me, and since I was very aware of how vulnerable and defenseless I was at that moment, I jumped back in my car as quickly as I could and decided to drive the rest of the short way to the local mechanic and wait the rest of time until they opened in their parking lot.
Had an emergency beep come in. Turns out gas stations in Mexico don't always have a functioning bathroom.
Not terrifying, but I was at a gas station at 4 a.m. once and a woman in the car next to mine ate a cigarette.
I was parked at a rest stop in the middle of Texas, stretching my legs. There was a good amount of traffic right behind me on the highway and plenty of road noise. As I stepped towards the restrooms, I heard some horns honking, so I glanced over my shoulder while walking and felt a rush of wind and the roar of a truck engine go past me. Traffic was stopping on the highway and an 18-wheeler lost its brakes and went hauling ass through the rest stop parking lot and nearly took me and 4 cars out, but managed to avoid everything except a dog poop station on his way through. If I wouldn't have slowed down to look over my shoulder, I would have been a smear on the asphalt.
Not my story but a friend of mine's. His family was on the road heading to Florida when they stopped at a gas station in Georgia. He really needed to take a dump, so his family waited in the car. As he was doing his business, the door to the bathroom opens and he sees a pair of feet walk into the stall next to him. A few seconds go by before he hears the sounds of thunderous farts and the sound of thumps into water. He begins to laugh as hard as he can without making a sound, letting a small laugh out. The dude next to him perks up, he starts banging on the walls. The pooper says, "Someone in there?" My friend stays quiet while still laughing. The pooper stands up, not even bothering to pull his pants up. The pooper starts banging on the door to my friend's stall, he desperately tries to keep the door shut. The pooper says, "I'll beat the beep out of you," ironically. This moment, my friend is now actually scared and fearing for his life. Suddenly, the pooper stops banging on the door, walking over to his stall and wipes his ass. The pooper then storms out of the bathroom, my friend still frozen in fear. My friend then waited in the stall for a few minutes, thinking that the pooper would be waiting for him outside the bathroom. After 5 minutes or so, my friend runs out of the gas station and into his family's car. He actually didn't talk about what happened until his family got to the hotel in Florida. The way he was telling the story still makes me laugh out loud to this day. This dude honestly thought a stranger was going to beat him up from the sound of his rancid beep.
California minus $5.15 per gallon diesel fuel on I-5 between Sacramento and Los Angeles. 300 gallons at a time adds up quickly.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.